So we're talking about a culture of longevity, creating a culture of longevity. And when I told Gary, actually, since, hey, you're on the panel now, that this was our topic, he's like, what the heck is that? And I was like, great question. So what is a culture of longevity? And when I think about this conference and what we've been talking about, what we've been learning together, it's what do we take after this? What are we doing after this in our daily practices, at our work, with our families, with ourselves, to create a culture of longevity and make change happen? And it is with the culture. It starts with culture. And culture, as we all know, is hard to foster and very hard to change. And so we have to come up with tactics and tools to change the culture. We've talked about this a lot, Katie, that leadership, executives, the culture of an organization starts with the leaders of an organization. It starts from the top down and creating that solid foundation. And so we'll get to that in one second, but how do we as our own leaders of ourselves create a solid foundation to take with us? What does that mean to create a culture in ourselves of longevity? So what am I missing here, guys, with this definition?
I think one important part, so culture by definition requires two or more people, right? So for a culture, you need a group, but one person can have a profound impact on that culture. And as Dr. Edwards alluded to earlier, purpose is kind of the keystone of a culture. You have to define your purpose within any culture, whether it be your family or your friend group. Defining a purpose, I think, is maybe the most important initial step in culture.
Totally.
I love the book Free to Focus. Free to Focus talks about this compass in which you align people's desires. I love developing teams. I love seeing developing people. And this book has really resonated with me because it talks about how do you align people's desires with two things. One is passion, so you help people define their passion, and then second is proficiency. And I'm thinking about like freaking Alex and Tyler doing this podcast, like the Neuro Bros, you know what I mean? Like they are aligning their passions and proficiencies, and they're talking about the things that they love, right? Like how do we get good culture? We help people align those things.
Well, I'm not always as smart as maybe you are as far as reading books, but I am a huge sports fan. And, any sort of a sporting event, maybe other than, solo running or some other individual sports, is a team sport. And so, yes, Amelia, we have talked at length for many hours about what it means to have a sense of team and how the culture of that team is so important. And the basics of just seeing each other. I think maybe it was Courtney spoke earlier about holism and really looking at each individual person on your team and what they can bring to the team and elevating that. That's what helps propel and change culture into sometimes a more positive one, or one that's more engaging, where every member of the team has a voice and has a purpose.
I love it. So when we're talking about organizational longevity, woof. I mean, like that's some of the hardest longevity out there is organizational longevity. So how do we build trust and resilience with our coworkers, our peers, our employees to build this culture or this, long-term sense of pride in our work and what we're doing? And for a long time, Scott, we've talked about the word resilience quite a bit. Now, Mike up, tell us about this word.
When I think about longevity, that's one of the words that comes to my mind right off the get-go. And it comes up often in patient care. So I had a conversation with John not that long ago about patients who come to therapy that are very afraid to move. They feel like they're going to get injured again, they're nervous, and there's no longevity in that, right? Like
right.
You're kind of stuck in a rut. So
right.
We have to teach people that you are resilient. Resilient things adapt. They become stronger when the right amount of load is put on them over time. So bringing that into our teams, with our patient care, and even in our own lives, associating ourselves with the right people, giving ourselves the right challenges, that promotes that longevity in all aspects.
Absolutely. Building that trust, telling them they can do it, right?
I think on building that trust, part of building a positive culture within a work culture, family culture, whatever it is developing really high quality relationships. You have to care about the people you're leading. You have to care about the people you're working alongside to have a positive culture. So how can you foster those relationships?
Love it. Katie, take
Oh,
us back to the workplace.
I was just going to say, so Danielle made a comment just a few minutes ago about the power of saying thank you. And so thinking about longevity and resilience and all that stuff within the work field, it's truly having those connections. And,
Right.
and people know when you look at them in the eye and you say, thank you so much for what you do, and what you do matters, they know whether or not you really mean that.
Totally.
And so it's really, truly investing in our teams and in those that, I'm back to the team, that truly are delivering the care. Because people can be so resilient if they know that they're working for a greater purpose. If they feel that they are just there to check a box or to be a warm body for the day, you're going to get that type of production.
Absolutely.
A number of years ago, a colleague and I were interviewing a gal to be a receptionist in our office. And my colleague asked her the question, what's something you're passionate about? I think he just wanted to get to know what she liked to do outside. But her answer was, I'm passionate about relationships. And it was just kind of a striking answer, one that I didn't expect, especially in this type of interview. But that's really stuck with me over the years. So Katie, when you say that, like talking about your teammates and who you bring in, you really have to surround yourself with the right people. I was joking with some of my colleagues the other day that almost every one of our offices will tell you that they have the best team in the company. And it's because of the people that you bring in. And if you have that purpose, that unity, it just makes for a fun work environment, which obviously brings on longevity.
Yeah.
And I love the connection piece because I read
Because you're so great at it,
Definitely
Brad.
good at
I mean,
connection,
when
for
I
sure.
think about genuine connection, it's Brad Powell. Everybody, am I
I
right?
wouldn't go
It's
that far.
genuine.
I've never seen Brad without a smile.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
never.
And how are you really? And you're like, oh my gosh, am I gonna cry right now?
You guys are too nice to me. So I was thinking about connection. I heard a quote once that said, someone that was disconnected was just as bad on their health as smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. So if someone felt disconnected in a culture or in a community, it was just as bad as smoking.
Whoa.
Right? 3 packs a day. Like,
It's
that is
crazy.
crazy. And in my mind, connection is really 2 things. Do I love the individual that I'm talking to? And do I care to listen to their story?
Right. And I mean, that's with our employees, that's with our peers, with our bosses, it's with our patients. I mean, that matters all around, right? So let's talk about outside passions. So when we're creating this culture of longevity, specifically in the workplace, it's about the time that we also spend away from the workplace that matters, right? And so we need to build this culture of encouraging PTO. John, Senior, you talked about take your sabbaticals, take your PTO, enjoy that time away, right? And I think that there's a little bit, sometimes, especially, we're all working hard, we're all busy. Someone is gone for 2 weeks. Oh yeah, I bet that trip was super lovely while we were all here working our booties off, right? And it's how do we say, oh my gosh, please get out of here, enjoy your time, and we've got you while you're gone. Brad, you told the funniest story about a time that you reprimanded an employee for this exact thing. Talk about this.
Yeah, I had an office manager. She's been with me since I started, and I'm so close to her. But the first year, She finished out her year, and we have a use it or lose it pay or PTO policy. I don't believe in PTO that's paid out. I don't believe that you should roll it over. PTO is to actually take time off so you can be better while you're here and a better person. So we had that policy in place. She came to the end of the year, and she had, I can't even remember, around 40 to 60 hours of PTO. And my bookkeeper told me, are you going to roll that over? I'm like, no, we have a strict policy. We are not rolling that over. But I pulled her in my office, and I said, what in the world? You have 60 hours of PTO, this paid benefit that we've given you, and you are not using it. Why in the world are you not using your PTO? Like, I really want an explanation.
Yeah, great
I
question.
promise I'm not
Great
reprimanding
question.
you, but I want a good explanation. And she just said, I didn't have a reason to take time off. And I said, I don't care what reason it is. Go up in the mountains, go outside and read a book. I don't care what it is, but you have to take that time off. It is a requirement in this organization that you take that PTO. That is why it is gifted to you. That's why it's a part of your benefit package, and it's so important. I need you to be your best version of yourself. These patients need you to be the best version of yourselves. So we want that to be a huge priority in our organization.
And I love that, Brad, because we need bosses like you that encourage us to leave, right? And then on the flip side, Scott, you're like trying to run all of these different practices. Katie, the hospital you opened 10 years ago never closed, right? You're like, hold on, folks. People are dying. We got to do these jobs still. So how do we send, our peers and employees away on these very well-deserved, PTO breaks, and then make sure that their jobs are getting done while they're gone, they're not freaking out, that the workload is not on us either, right? But we have people to support us, and holy cow, that's a whole lot of things. How do we manage that?
I think it's really important that only over the last 2 years have I started to learn to actually take the time. It's kind of funny with executives. They say, oh, you've made it, unlimited PTO. And we all kind of laugh because it's like, oh, that's cute. Yeah, we're probably not going to actually take it. That's why they give you unlimited, by the way.
See you next year.
But learning that in order to have longevity in my career, in my passion for what I do, that means I have to be able to disconnect. I have to be able to fill my bucket again. And thinking about like my team that's all looking at me, and it's really easy as a leader to say, no, you take the time. I've got you. You go. Well, I've created this team, or we've created a team that's like, well, we don't want to be the one that leaves you by yourself. And so I think leading by example of, you know what, it is important to make yourself a priority and that disconnect a priority, and encouraging, reprimanding, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, your team to do the same, because a great thing happens. You come back. As long as you have things in place to keep up on work while those people are gone, so they don't come back and kind of get punished for being gone for 2+ weeks or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
That's a key that we're still trying to figure out. But then they come back such a rejuvenated and a better engaged employee overall. And I think really paying attention to, again, the human connection part. I want to know about your vacation. If you're willing, I'd love to see pictures. Share with me a little bit about what was that experience like? And not, well, glad you're finally back. Get to work.
And that's the connection piece, right? We went to lunch and we were talking about your son, right? We were talking about our families.
Sorry,
that's
I
the
do brag
connection
a lot
piece. I
about
love
my
it.
son.
He's cool though, He's
You
cool.
should. He's
yeah,
awesome.
absolutely. It's those outside passions that make us better at work, right? I know we're passionate people. We love medicine, we love our jobs, whatever. But also, let's love some other things, and it's so fun to, dive into those other things and express the need for that. David, shout out to you for shouting out book club. Deep work, right? Let's get away. Let's dive into our passions. Let's explore creativity. We'll be better at our jobs because of it. All right, so Brandy, culture leader at Summit. Let's talk about
Love the title. Don't know if I deserve it.
It's a great title. Let's talk about the blue zones. So the blue zones are these different places throughout the world where they have the highest percentage of centenarians, right? People who are living to 100 years old, which is amazing. So I'm going to take a little audience poll. You have 3 options here. What is the connecting piece between the blue zones? Is it A, their intake of beans? Nobody? Wow. Is it B, walking with sheep every day? Okay, still no takers. C, is it their connection and community? Brandy, what do you think?
Honestly, when you look at the study, so to be a little bit more in depth about that, these are 5 distinct areas throughout the world where people live in general about 10 years longer than the rest of the average population. One of them is in Greece, one of them is in Italy. There's a group of Seventh-day Adventists in California.
Costa Rica.
There's one in Costa Rica.
Right.
And some Danish researchers looked at them in depth and said, what do these communities share? And they came up with what they call the Power 9, which are 9 similarities. In fact, eating beans was a very big part of it.
It really is, okay? Increase that.
Yeah, more
folks.
beans, less meat.
That was a right
Tragic.
answer. All of the above.
Yep. But they boiled that down even further, and there's kind of 4 qualities. Ironically, Dr. Edwards actually spoke on 3 of them. So nutrition. All of these people eat primarily a Mediterranean-based diet. They call it wine at 5. I'm not encouraging everyone out there to go drink wine. But if you want to, I mean, you might be able to feel a little better about it. But you can't drink the dessert wine. What were some of the other ones with the nutrition?
Beans.
A lot of beans. A lot of beans. So nutrition was one big component. Another big component was activity. And specifically, they called it, they actually, none of them referenced it as exercise. They normally move throughout their day. None of these communities go to work and then come home and say, okay, now I have to fit my 30 to 60 minutes of exercise in. Their lives, exercise is built into their lives. And I think one of my bigger takeaways is, how do we do that as a healthcare population? How can we build exercise into our workplace so that you don't go home and you're not overwhelmed by, now I have to figure out a way to fit that into it.
But ultimately, let's get back to that connection and community.
Yes.
How do we
And
increase that aspect?
Yes. So that was the other big one. Connection was probably the one with the most points on it. All of these communities are less individualistic based. America in general is a little bit more of an individual society. They care for their elderly at home, which actually increased the lifespan of the younger children in those homes, which was an interesting finding. They all have time for rest and de-stress, whether it be a siesta or some sort of faith-based community that they spend time connecting. And those were some of the key points from the Power 9.
Spending time connecting with our communities, which is what we're doing here, right? And it's what we need to do in the workplace as well and back at home, right? And when I think about, what that balance looks like, work-life balance, I'm trying not to use that word anymore. I'm trying to use work-life harmony. Balance means we're walking this precarious tightrope. Harmony means that they go hand in hand. So how are we creating this harmony?
In healthcare, one of the things that we're looking at is looking at other industries that have been successful in that harmony. So take the teaching profession. A lot of people go into teaching because they're passionate about education. Some do it because they think, the schedule, how amazing would that be? Work 9 months, get a few months off. You can decide how you want to get paid. Do you want to get paid equally over 12 months? Do you want to have, your summers off and unpaid? And so that's something actually that as healthcare providers, we're looking at. How do we offer that for nurses? How do we offer that for physical therapists?
Absolutely.
And starting to really push that boundary a little bit around, our generation is changing and the needs and the demands, and we are seeing more and more people leave because of this lack of balance.
Right.
And so how do we provide that? And at the end, really hopefully get people that stay in healthcare and love it and are still very passionate.
I love it.
I think one of the most important points is to be proactive and intentional with our goals in life. I just got the coolest calendar. I'm a planner fanatic. It's a 365 calendar. It's like as big as this. I'm not even kidding you. My wife was super stoked about it. She said I could put it in the closet. It was a little bit bigger than the closet, but I put it on the wall in the closet. And there's kind of stuff covering it. But I organized literally all my meetings for the year. Every family event that we had, every employee birthday, every family birthday. I had everything's color coded. So I have red is our foundation stuff. So I got all my meetings for foundation. I got my retreats. I got all my conferences in blue. Like everything's just mapped out on this thing. I'm really obsessive about it. I absolutely love it. But I think the most important part is we're intentional about our goals, right? Like, what's our big goal this next year? Like, this year, my big goal was to bike Utah Lake. It was 100 miles. I did it on Sunday, and I was so stoked. And I told everyone in our practice, I'm like, that was my big goal for the year. My butt was really sore.
I love that. With that, I'm going to wrap this panel up. Let's be intentional. Let's create a positive culture of longevity. Let's start with ourselves, and let's keep having conversations that are meaningful about it, because that's the way to create change. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you.
Thank you.